What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another live stream here on Met Central. I was going to do a video for this, but for some reason, the file got corrupted, so I figured I would just go live and talk about this instead for a few minutes. I'm not going to be live too long because I didn't even want to do a live stream for this, and I'm even annoyed that I have to go and do this all over again and give my whole thoughts, opinions, whatever, but what is going on, guys? The New York Mets signed Frankie Montas to a 2-year contract. It is a $36 million contract, $34 million contract for 2 years with a player option for the second year. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to give my thoughts, opinion, all that other stuff. Before we jump into everything, please be sure to leave a like on the live stream on your way in. Subscribe if you guys are new, especially if you're Met fans, and turn on your notifications so you know when I upload or go live on the channel. Again, I didn't even plan on going live for this because it's not even going to be that long of a live stream, if I'm being honest with you guys, but that's what happened. It is what it is. What's done is done. But yeah, in terms of my overall thoughts, I got mixed feelings about this signing. I really do, because there are things I like about it. There are things I don't like about it. Let's start with the positives. The positive is, if this is the plan to replace Jose Quintana in the rotation, I think this is a perfect rotation fix. I think that you're getting an upgrade with it being still virtually a lateral move in some ways, because I think Quintana is going to get a similar deal, maybe signed for a little bit less. And I think that they're very similar pitchers, outside of one being right-handed, one being left-handed. And I think that having Montas here, if he's filling in that role in the back end of the rotation, that is more than okay with me. Where we have problems is if he's doing anything more than being a back end of the rotation guy, because I do not want the Mets being in a spot where he's doing what Quintana did, having to pitch in important games come the playoffs. Like, it was not a good situation that Jose Quintana was their third most reliable arm in the playoffs. And it's not that Jose Quintana was terrible in the playoffs, but you did strike gold at points with the fact that he was giving you better starts than you would have thought you were going to get from him. Because ideally, if you told any Met fan in July that Quintana was going to start in the playoffs, that would be a problem. If he is replacing Severino and Manaea, though, that is where I don't love the signing, because I do have a lot of questions with Frankie Montas. My first question, how much is health a concern? Because he did throw 150 innings, which isn't necessarily a huge workload. Like, I would consider 2021 his last full chunk of a workload where he gave 187 innings. So there are worries about that. And 2023, I mean, he pretty much didn't pitch the entire season. My next biggest issue, walks, because this pitching staff, what was their biggest issues? Walks. And it was a lot of them, nonstop, mind you. And it worries me bringing in another guy who does have walk issues, and I just don't know how that's going to mold well. I really don't, because Jeremy Hefner seems to just not be able to address it, but maybe he will fix some other things, because outside of the walk issues, the other big issue, I can bind main and big for some reason, but big issue that I have here is his cutter. And if you look at the numbers against his cutter, it is brutal. It was a 326 batting average against, 337 expected batting average against, 609 slugging percentage, 619 expected slugging, WOBA 430, expected WOBA 444, and it was just not good. His cutter was getting beat badly. You look at the four seam, though, really good from him, because he could throw heat. And if you look back just at previous seasons when he was last healthy in 2022, which that's what you're really banking on, there's a lot of things that you like, because he was generating swing and miss stuff. He was getting up in the 95, 96 territory with his fastball, and he wasn't walking as many batters, which that you got to hope for, because if he's walking as many as he was last year, we're going to have huge problems here. He is a guy that I think could benefit from both playing in Citi Field, as well as the fact that he's going to have a better defense behind him. So those are two things that I do think helps the situation a lot better, because having guys like Siri, having guys like Lindor behind him is going to help him in terms of allowing contact, and especially because he does allow the long ball quite a bit. I think playing in this bigger ballpark is going to help, because if you look at Cincinnati, not ideal. I mean, his numbers were terrible in Cincinnati. He was allowing a lot of home runs, allowing a lot of hits, and it is a hitter-friendly park. But when he got to Milwaukee, things started to improve. I mean, he was getting a lot more strikeouts. His strikeouts per nine spiked to 11. His walks per nine, though, was still terrible, 3.9. Home runs per nine, still not good, 1.6. And his hits per nine, 7.4, which is a little bit better than what it was in Cincinnati, which gave him a total for the whole season of 4.84 ERA. In 150 innings of work, he had an ERA plus of 89, a FIP of 4.71, a WHIP of 1.36, hits per nine of 8.4, home runs per nine of 1.4, walks per nine of 3.9, and a strikeouts per nine of 8.8. He did give a solid start in the playoffs against the Mets. But again, I don't love, ideally, if he's one of your top three guys, that I don't love. I think ideally the Mets' best situation is if Sang is obviously towards the top and you got to hope that he's healthy. They go out and sign another top-end starter or middle rotation guy, and then you get a big-time starter, whether that's trading for a Garrett Crochet. And I do have my questions about signing a Corbin Burnes, but if they did sign him, I wouldn't necessarily complain because that is a guy that could anchor the rotation and fairly well. And then I'm feeling more comfortable. But again, I just don't necessarily love if he is pitching any higher in the rotation than those spots. And obviously there are times he might have to fill in because Sang is injury prone and there are injuries that happen in general. Peterson hasn't had the healthiest career despite staying healthy relatively for the most part this past season. So ever since coming in from his injury, that is, of course. But outside of that, he does have injury scares of his own. So you do have to worry about things like that. But for the most part, I don't necessarily hate it, but I don't necessarily love it. That's kind of where I feel about the signing, where I'm indifferent. I think that this is something where if they could get him right and he could be a guy where, which I also don't love the player option for the second year, to be honest with you, because I don't love the idea of the fact where, you know, say he does have a Severino Manaea season, you're going to lose the guy after having a great year, and it's really going to suck. And then it's also a situation where if he does suck, you're stuck with $17 million on the books for another season. Your best case scenario is where he's pitching to like a high 3, low 4 ERA with like a FIP in that range as well. And you're consistently getting 5 to 6 innings of good quality baseball where he's, you know, allowing 3 to 5 runs, which that's what I expect from him on a nightly basis when he goes out there every 5th day. So if you get that and he signs for or takes the player option, then it's really not the worst case scenario. But I also don't love the idea where, again, you're switching your rotation year in and year out. I would like them to get a little bit more stability, which, again, this isn't the only move they're going to make. So I'm not sitting here and saying that at all. And there is time for them to do that. But there is, of course, that factor to it where I don't necessarily love, but I don't hate the player option entirely. But yeah, it's really going to come down to, could the Mets pitching lab help him out? It's really what it's going to come down to. And Milwaukee didn't have a full season to work with him, so there is that to it because his numbers did get better in Milwaukee, but I still have my worries a little bit just because looking at the Savant page, it was really rough for him last year. But there is, of course, the hope that things could get better and he can maybe get back to what he was in 2022, 2021. And if you're getting that type of production from Frankie Montas, you're getting yourself a very solid arm here. And I think that that would be, of course, the best case scenario. And you got to hope that they could find a way to get that. Because I don't think they're ever going to get what he was in 2019 when he was on PEDs and had the suspension. And he only pitched 16 games because I'm pretty sure it was that year he got suspended for it. I could be wrong. But yeah, in 2019, I don't think you're going to get that production from him. If you do, great. But I could realistically see more of him being what he was if you look at the base numbers in 2018, even though it was a short sample size where you look at the ERA 3.88, a FIP of 3.90, a positive WAR player. I could see it realistically being more of that than anything else from him. But let me get to the chat and see what you guys are saying. Leave a like, though, like I said, if you haven't already. Subscribe if you guys are new. And let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. Like I said, I'm going to keep this very brief because I'm not going to spend the whole night talking about a Frankie Montas signing. I'll do that on a podcast going a little bit more in depth because I do have to do one with Matt sometime soon, who is in the chat saying seats. It's a typical David Stearns signing. Trust the lab. The hope is you could get something between 2019 and 2021. Exactly. And if you get something in that range of production from him, then I'm not complaining at all. It's really mostly what could you get to maximize him. And I do have questions if they could, how much they're going to get from him. But again, we'll see. But that is the best case scenario, obviously, if they find a way to get him to be in that range. Sorry, just doing something over here. But let's see. Mets didn't sign Juan Soto. They signed Frankie Montas. Yeah, I mean, Juan Soto didn't make a decision yet. So it's hard to sign Juan Soto when he's not ready to make a decision, when there's a bidding war. Even though I have my doubts right now with that whole situation. I hope that I'm wrong about that. But we'll see where things go on that front, which, again, we'll talk about that. Hopefully. If he's the 4 or 5, I have zero issue. If he's the 2 or 3, I'm concerned. I'm not sure what you're talking about. If you're talking about innings, if he's pitching 2 or 3 innings, then he can't even be on the roster then at that point. So I'm not sure what your numbers you're referring to on that, or you're talking about rotation slots. Sorry. I don't know why I got confused, but yes, I agree with that entirely. If he's the 4 or 5, ideally, again, you have Senga and whoever else they get in the top 3. I want Crochet badly, and I know it's going to cost prospects, but I think getting a cost control arm to save some money there, and if you sign a Sasaki, you could live with a rotation of, in my opinion at least, because you'd have to go 6-man at that point. I think if the rotation was Crochet, then you had Senga, Sasaki, Montas, Peterson, and then you had Blackburn as like the 6th starter. I think that's a very comfortable spot with the rotation. If you want to go a little bit more lethal, you bring back Mania maybe in there. You maybe sign a another arm similar to that territory of Mania, which there's not a lot of options because Max Fried's not going to come here. He's really said it seems like I'm playing on the West Coast, or if not, he's probably just going to go back to Atlanta. So this guy's not good. What are they doing? They need Crochet and Burns for sure. Are they kidding me? This isn't the only signing they're going to make. And if this is one of the only signings they make, then we have problems. And I would agree with you then at that point. But for right now, I'm not going to sit here and lose my mind over this signing. Again, it really comes down to what he is going to, where he's going to slot in the rotation. That's what it boils down to. Give them time. None of those guys have signed yet. And I know Blake Snell signed and everyone's impatient because of that. But you have to give it time for those guys. You just have to give it time. And believe me, I want the offseason to move. But we have to wait at this point, it feels like, for Soto to make a decision before we see anyone start to flow in the free agent market. And same thing with Burns. Burns is really going to set the table there. And I'm sure the Mets are interested in a guy like Burns. But, again, you got to give them time. You got to give them time to make these moves. Yeah, if they could give Sasaki or convince Sasaki, like you're saying, yeah, they have to go with a 6-man then, yeah. Crochet, Burns, Senga, Mania, Montas, Peterson, I would be okay with. They're not going to land Crochet, Burns, and Mania. I'm sorry. I would love that, and I am not complaining one bit if it is, but you are dreaming if you think that they are going to have every single one of those guys. Again, not complaining if they do, but it's time to spend like the Dodgers do. That's going to require someone taking deferred money. That's the only thing with that. You got to find someone willing to take deferrals. But either way, I am going to wrap this up because I'm not going to spend all night talking about this. We will do a deeper dive on a podcast episode in the future. So subscribe if you guys are new and turn on your notifications so you know when we do that. Don't forget to leave a like if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next one.